I know you're optimistic about the NBA. I want you to expound upon that. And also, do you think is a possibility the NFL could return? Obviously, many more players on the field.
This is why I believe the NBA can go, because now you got, I mean, what is the roster? 15, maybe 13 to 15 people. Whereas in MMA, I know it's not as many, but you got 4 people with every single fighter. You got 3 cornermen and the fighter. The main event guys have 4 corners in the fighter. You can test these people, put them in one area, like I said, and then let them start playing basketball, because we need live sports right now, and we need basketball. Right now is the time where we be, getting ready for the playoffs and all the best basketball that we've waited for. And it's like we're missing out on those things because of the virus. And I understand that we're in a different time, but now the testing is more readily available and people are more inclined to trying to make things happen. So I think it can work. I just believe that you have to put a plan in place that everybody can agree with. Obviously, it's a lot different with the Players Association and everything. They have to agree too. But I believe people want to go back to playing the sports that they love.
DC, always good to see you. Thank you for being on the show, and congratulations on a phenomenal job of calling the fight Saturday night. You guys were fantastic. Didn't miss a beat. Let me ask you this. When you first learned that Souza had tested positive, what was your reaction, and what were the reactions of the other fighters who obviously had not tested positive? What was their mindset about going ahead with the event? Can you talk about that for a second?
I don't think, for me personally, I never saw Jacare all week, right? I got there on Thursday. I'm ready to work on Friday. I never saw Jacare. So I didn't get worried about anything because I'd never seen him or come in contact with him. And then the rest of the fighters, no one mentioned worrying about competing. They understood that someone had tested positive, and I think for the most part, with all the tests that happened last week, it was going to be very surprising if no one did, because you got a ton of people. They tested 400 people last week, and if you look at the percentage of people that are testing positive for the coronavirus, having 4 out of 400 seems to fall in line with some of the stats and the numbers that are out there. So you kind of expected someone to have an issue, but not one fighter, Stephen A., not one said anything about not wanting to compete. Everybody was so fired up about fighting on the card, and not only just because it was an opportunity to go fight and make money, because it was going to be a massive card. And honestly, not only did it deliver on television, but it delivered at the box office too. No crowd, so that gate money was gone, but the thing did over 700,000 pay-per-view buys. So that's a massive card to be a part of, and you knew that you would get some new fans because the entire sports world was watching UFC 249, so no one said anything about wanting to pull out of the card.
Yeah, if you test a bunch of people, you're going to find the virus because it's out there. And in fact, if the general population could test as much as the UFC just did, then we could locate the virus. That's the whole problem. Isolate the people who have it, and then it wouldn't spread. That's the good idea. The real issue is, are there enough tests to go around so that a league like the NBA isn't perceived, at least, as taking necessary tests away from others? I want to get to your call of the fight. Greg Hardy said afterward, after he won his fight, that he heard you from ringside, from the octagon. You were ringside calling the fight, obviously. Say he's got to start checking those kicks. Just so you can explain to the audience who's unaware, what does checking the kick mean? The way you lift your leg, and then what do you think about that? Does that give one or the other fighter an unfair advantage? What do you do about that?
We dealt with that twice on Saturday night. The guys were very aware, and girls were aware of what we were saying next to the octagon. When I say check the kicks, Greg Hardy was getting his leg beat up. I mean, the guy was landing brutal leg kicks to the outside of his leg. And if you take too many of those kicks, eventually you can't stand, you can't move. And for a guy like Greg Hardy, who's a top-level athlete, taking away his movement is probably the easiest way to make the fight fair. Well, I started talking about him checking the kicks. Lift your leg, meet his shin with your shin. It then hurts the person that's delivering the blow. Hurt Yorgan De Castro's leg, actually broke his foot, and then he was just there, because he couldn't kick anymore. And the people were hearing us because, like Stephen A. told me off air, we called it as if there were 20,000 people in the arena. When we're in the arena with 20,000, we still worry when people get close to the side of the octagon that we sit, can they hear us? Well, nobody's in there, so your voice is just projecting over the entire arena and in the octagon so people can hear. I even told Dana, I said, why such a big place if there's no fans? And he said, I want to give these guys the feel that they're in the UFC. And I don't want a small ceiling and a small venue because that's not what we're about. These guys and these girls are in the UFC, and they should feel that as they compete. Mm-hmm. And I thought that the event went phenomenal, and it's going to continue to grow from here and get better phenomenal with the testing and with the with the protocols in place to make sure everybody's healthy and able to compete.
It was phenomenal. And by the way, I don't give a damn about the fighters hearing you and Joe Rogan and everybody calling the fight. Hell, Max, you can appreciate that. Fighters heard you talking when you were sitting there calling fights with Jim Lampley and Roy Joe Jr. They heard you. Then deal with it. Who cares? I don't care about that. But I will tell you, let me ask you this, though. Gaethje won the fight. That's right. Gaethje won the fight against Tony Ferguson. I mean, his striking ability is incredibly, incredibly impressive. Max and I addressed this question. I'd like you to answer this for us. Obviously, Nurmagomedov is the champion. Dana White says he's next in line to go up against Gaethje, obviously, because he's the real champion. I actually think in terms of a crowd pleaser, the better fight next would be Gaethje against Conor McGregor. What are your thoughts about that?
I think Conor versus Justin is a fantastic fight in terms of style matchup because they're both going to go out there and they're going to stand and trade. Justin Gaethje is a guy that is an all-American wrestler, but he does not wrestle. He uses it kind of like Chuck Liddell used to, sprawl and brawl. If you try to take him down, he'll sprawl and make you stand with him. And obviously we know who Conor is, the biggest draw in the game.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.